sister moon. I seldom see you, seldom hear your tune. Preoccupied with selfish misery.
Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, reporting from inside the Church of San Francisco in Foligno. And this is probably going to be my last video. I'm reporting back on my 8th day of walking, but I will be walking no more, and I'll explain why. So, going back to yesterday, I decided I wouldn't be staying longer in Assisi like some of the others. I wanted to walk some more. So woke up in the morning with Norbert and Max staying in my apartment, and we went for a late breakfast in the central square, so I didn't get going till about 11. One thing I should say that I didn't mention in my previous video is at the party before, Marianne's sister had gone out for a meal, and she came back with two random tourists, and they were an English guy and his Colombian wife. We got chatting to them. He was originally from Leicestershire, but lived in London now. And she had a bit of a sixth sense. She had a gift of seeing things. Very fervent Catholic. He was a convert because of her, I think. But yeah, very interesting couple, actually. But anyway, I set off much later than planned. We stopped at the Basilica of St. Clair. And I think that was important because, as Elena had said the night before, what made St. Francis so much what he was St. Clair. It was that balance of male and female. And I think one reason why Assisi is such a holy city is it does have that male-female balance there. And at the two ends of the town are the two great churches, and one's male and one's female. And I think that's good. So saw the crucifix upon which Christ spoke to St. Francis from. It's in the Church of St. Clair now, and prayed at her tomb. And then said goodbye to my comrades and walked. And as far as walks go, it was one of the easier ones, about 13.5 kilometres. There was a couple of little stiff climbs, but most of it was as flat as Italy gets. I mean, Italy's never flat, it's always up and down. But it was pleasant through olive groves mostly, and clinging along the side of the valley quite high up, so looking out over the Umbrian Valley, which reminded me, of course, of when I first came to Assisi. We came in the van, obviously lower down in the valley, and looking out over that valley and thinking, what a beautiful part of the world this is. I stopped for my lunch, sat on a wall, and came across another pilgrim, and his name was Mark Israel, and he was Jewish, and he'd done a number of Caminos, and we had a bit of a chat about various Caminos, the Israel situation at the moment, and I told him about the way to Jerusalem, so I'm hoping I've inspired him to get in touch with Golan and Yale and do the way to Jerusalem. And he did say he would mention it to some friends of his as well. So let's see. But yes, walked there. There was a descent, but in terms of stuff that I've done before, it was nothing too bad. But this ankle problem is not going away, and I got to Spello, which is an absolutely gorgeous town, Roman foundations, and it's long and thin, and I entered at the top and walked down through all these streets and stopped at a cafe, and just the ankle was so painful. I just thought, I'm not doing that extra 3k to Foligno, so I took the train, and that was that. My intention, of course, was to walk today, but I am so tired. I've done 8 days walking. I know I had 1 day break in Assisi, but it wasn't much of a break because you're still walking around a lot there. And the ankle is a problem, but also it is absolutely thrown it down today, and I wasn't walking anywhere in that. And the other thing is, I think there's a sort of how can I say, divine plan in this, in the respect that I bought as my reading for the trip Angela Foligno, who was a mystic in the 13th century. I chanced across her, didn't know anything about her. I'd read like a couple of extracts of her stuff in compilations of Christian mysticism. And I just thought, Foligno, go in there, get the book. And she's been my companion throughout. And I always thought, well, I'd like to finish the book in Foligno. And I was just having so little time to read it that I thought, well, that was never going to happen. And yet there I was with about 50 pages to go, stuck in Foligno. So I woke up a little bit, I say late, like 9 o'clock, had a very pleasant breakfast in a cafe, read some book, and then I've come here to the Church of San Francisco, which of course St. Francis, and I am ending my Camino by the relics of Saint Angela of Foligno, because the book says she isn't a saint, but she is, because Pope Francis made her one. So there we are. And I guess there's so much to reflect on there, and I may do another video with reflections on this, but for now, I think it's right to end here. I'm going to come back, and I'll probably just go to Spello and walk straight through Foligno, because I'm seeing the sights today. And therefore I won't have missed that little chunk of 3 kilometres. But I don't know, I just feel now's the time. Now's the time, and you know, I did want to push on from Assisi, but I guess my saint for this leg has been Angela. And I wish it's a very female Camino I'm doing this one, and there's my female saint. Foligno as a city, I haven't really explored it much yet, but it's not as pretty as some of the others. It was bombed during the war because it's a major railway junction. But there are interesting bits. Had a wonderful meal last night. Had pasta with like truffle sauce. Getting really into truffles. And this salad that was like tomato, carrot, walnut, cheese, and bits of chicken. Oh, and rocket and stuff. Oh, it was amazing. Amazing. Yes, my first leg, it was Lent and I couldn't do the meat. And you miss so much. I mean, I don't want to knock vegetarianism, but you really don't, guys. You're missing something here. The food has been 10 times better this time. It's just been incredible. Although I have had some nice vegetarian food. I mean, that truffle pizza I had the other day. But, you know, yeah. There we are. So, yes, that was that. So, I am taking it easy today. I'm going to go to the cathedral, which is dedicated to, I think it's St. Feliciano, who is the patron saint of here, as an early martyr. A lot of early martyrs knocking around here. The museum, and then I'm going to get on the train to Spello, it's where my accommodation is, and then tomorrow from Spello I'm going to go to Perugia and have it. So I'm going to have a look at these places, and then the fact is I don't need to look at the next one. My only worry is, of course, I was always intending to do this in 3 lots. The final lot is going to be a really big monster walk, and so I may be splitting it into 2. Who knows? Who knows? Do you know what? These things don't ultimately matter. They've got to be done in the right time. They've got to be done in the right way. And at the end of the day, you've got to listen to your body on pilgrimage, because if you push it too far, you cause irredeemable harm. I have the energy to walk, but this ankle is a problem, and I will be going to a physiotherapist. When I come back, it's not going away. It's not something you can walk out. And that's that. And if that means that from now on I can only do pilgrimages of 8 days or 10 days long, and then, you know, then that so be it. But then, you know, maybe I'm being too harsh, because this is a particularly challenging pilgrimage in terms of the terrain. You know, this problem started on the Camino de Santiago, which is less challenging, far less challenging. Wasn't really an issue on the road to Jerusalem. But then that was shorter, I guess. I don't know, let's see. In terms of future plans, as well as finishing this, I really want to do that Hildegard von Bingen one. It's 6 days. It's not much. You know what I mean? That could be a nice little trip. And it's quite good probably that it's 6 days because I think the accommodation will be more. So yes, maybe I'll be going to the Rhine Valley sometime soon. I hope so. I think that would be pleasant. Other reflections. Do you know what? Here I am by a saint's tomb and it's deserted. No, I've had one person come in and pay respects in the last hour or so that I've been in this church. Compare that to that continuous flowing river of Francis and Clare. Why is it that some saints touch our hearts more than others? You know, and I'm thinking of doing an essay actually on after Francis's death, there was a big conflict within the order between the spiritual friars who were more or less about holy poverty like he was, and the more worldly community ones who eventually won, and they, built the big churches like this and that. And, one's heart goes with the spirituals because they were true to his ideals. But it's because of the worldly ones that we have what we have today. And, it's the worldly cult that's kept Francis's memory alive, otherwise he would have been forgotten. And indeed, forget Francis. Francis touches our hearts because he was so Christ-like. But Christ himself, I mean, if it wasn't for the gospel writers and people like Paul promoting it later, and I have issues with Paul, a lot of people have issues with Paul, but if it wasn't for them, Christ would have been completely forgotten. I mean, he was never mentioned in history. I know people say Josephus, but that's a later addition. He was just another crazy guy crucified for his rebellious beliefs, and that was it. And I guess we need both. We need the Christs and the Francises. But we also need the others, even though it's leaves a nasty taste in the mouth sometimes. I remember when I went to the Church of Mary and All Angels, which is on the plain below Assisi, and it's built around I forget the name, Portincula, I think it's called. It's another of those tiny churches that Francis did up. And it's almost like the church is like the relic, and there's this monstrous basilica built over it. And it just seemed wrong to me. There's that tiny humility in the middle, and there's just pomp and glory all around. But do we need both? I mean, weirdly, Angela went there and didn't find it distasteful. And I guess she would say, well, ultimately it's for Christ, and he is worth the pomp and glory. But, for our 21st century tastes, we'd have preferred a humble chapel in a field. Interesting. This pilgrimage has given me so much to think about, but now it's time to turn my attentions to going back home. My mum's not well, I'm going to be living with her. And who knows what the future will bring. I certainly don't. And also, as one approaches the middle years of life, well stuck in them really, you begin to think about yourself and your own mortality, particularly when your parents are dying, what do you want to achieve? And one of the reasons I went on this pilgrimage is to maybe think about my purpose in life, and I haven't found it yet. But I may be a little closer. I mean, I do get so much from pilgrimages like this, but also from those conversations with strangers, the passing on of knowledge, the random friendships. And when I look back at my life, all the highlights have been like that. I mean, I think like the first highlight of adulthood was when I went to Corfu and I became friends with like Melissa and Apostoli. And that's like this random chance encounter with a stranger. And yet it yielded so much. And that continued when I was on boards, when I was in Japan, through all my travels. In fact, it even was predated by one of my very first, kind of travel alone, although it wasn't really alone, was when I went to Malta on a school trip, and that was the first time I'd flown. And I was doing a project on the Hungarian temples, and I took a wander and met an old Maltese guy who was showing me some other Neolithic remains. And that chance encounter just really resonated with me. And so maybe that's the purpose, is to seek out the chance encounters. And what I want to do is I want to transform lives. But I want to transform lives in that way, through those chance encounters. So people go, that guy we met once, yeah. He said something and it really resonated. I think that's probably the way of the pilgrim. Anyway, for now, I'm hanging with Angela. It's been wonderful that you shared the journey with me. And God willing, we're back for part 3. Maybe even a part 4, but definitely a part 3. Onwards to Rome. Keep traveling.
Brother, son, and sister.